Yeah. Okay, so here's how to create the worksheet for the graphics assignment. We're going to start off with one of the templates. Hopefully you've still got a copy of the landscape template that we used in the first graphics assignment. I have a copy of it here. If you don't have one, maybe somebody else in your group can just give you a copy of theirs. If you need to recreate it, you can watch. There's another video lesson on the first graphics project that talks about how to make the template. But we'll start by changing the document title here. So this is going to be the Wordmark worksheet. Okay. And you'll want to make sure that it's got your name on it. So I'll add in my name. And that's what we'll do to get started. We're going to complete all of the definitions that are on the worksheet. In addition to that, we're going to create some little diagrams and illustrations here to give us some examples and help explain these further. So to start off with, I'm going to begin by typing out the word typeface. T-Y-P-E, face, typeface. And we're going to use a fairly large font here. I'm going to select all the type, and we're going to use the Times font. So I'm just going to type out the word Times here. And quite large. The type is going to be 150 point size. So I'm keying in 150 here. And we end up with some type that's about that big. Okay, quite large. I'd like to center that on the screen. Here's a little shortcut tip here. If I've got the type selected, these little icons that are right up here on the screen, these will allow you to align objects. So I can align these objects to the artboard, that's to the whole page, and I can ask that the object be centered horizontally. So if I look back now, it's put it right in the middle of the page. And I'll move it down slightly so it's sort of in the top third. Maybe about there is fine. Okay. So we've got that in position. I want to add in a couple of guidelines now too. Remember these little light blue guidelines? These show up on screen. They don't print out. They're just here to help position and guiding. So to put a guideline on screen, just move up into the ruler area, either on the horizontal or vertical axis, and just click and drag, and the guideline will follow behind you. So I'll put a guide underneath or at the base of the type, one in the middle here, and one toward the top of the letter T. And I'm going to box in with two more guides on either side so that we've kind of boxed or trapped in that word typeface. Right? We're going to add on a couple of dotted lines or dashed lines now, and they're really easy to make in Illustrator. If you remember, there's a line segment tool, this one right here. It's just for creating lines. And in Illustrator, we talk about line thickness as stroke. It's called the stroke. So in this case here, I want to have a line that's quite thin. It's just going to be 1 point stroke. Right? And I'm going to draw the line now between the guides. So I'm just going to click and drag. Helps to hold the Shift key down when you do this. It makes your line perfectly straight. I'll let go. So there I've got a single line. But if I zoom in a bit, you'll notice it's not dashed yet. It's just a straight solid line. So I'm going to select it. And then from the window menu at the top of the screen, I'm going to open up the stroke palette. The little stroke window. It just opened up right here. And from that stroke window, I can check off this box that says dashed. And all of a sudden the line comes out with the dashed marks and gaps. You can even control the amount of the length of the dash, the width of the gap. Right now it's an equal spacing. If I key in 6 point here for the gap, I'll end up with a gap that's half the width of the lines. So that's a dotted or dashed line that I've got on screen. I'm going to position that one right on top of the guide here. So it's right on top of that letter T. And then I'm going to copy and paste it a couple of times. Once, just pasted it once, and I'll put it in the middle here. And then I'll paste it again, and we'll put one at the bottom. We'll zoom out a little bit. I'll hide my guides for a moment. Just go to View and turn the guides off. And so we end up with a screen that looks like that. Okay. So we're ready to actually add in a couple of the definitions here. Turn the guides back on. That's Command semicolon. And we're going to type out the definitions underneath using a paragraph box, a text paragraph box. If you remember quickly, with the type tool, I can either click and start typing to insert type, or type is a little bit big. I think we'll go back to Helvetica font for this. About 12-point size would be fine. So that's for inserting just a line of text. But what I'd like to do here is actually create a paragraph of text. So I'm going to use the text tool, but this time I'm going to click and drag with the mouse to create, whoops, too close to the other type. Just click and drag to create a box, a paragraph box that we can type inside. The first definition that we have on the list is the word Wordmark. Now you should have some idea from the discussions from yesterday of what a Wordmark is. So what is a Wordmark?
A word thing that represents a company.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a logo, right? It's a type of logo, but it uses only type. Okay, so a word mark is a type of logo using only type. Maybe that's grammatically not so good. Let's say a form of logo using only type. Somebody give me the example of what a word mark would be. What's that? Yeah, Nike. The word's Nike spelled out N-I-K-E in that font they have that's kind of slanted. What were you going to say?
I was going to say Disney.
Yeah, Disney would work too. Okay. But again, we're not talking about, I don't know if, well, I guess the device mark for Disney might actually be Mickey Mouse himself or the silhouette of the ears. But we're just talking about the words Disney the way it's typed out. A device mark, which is the next definition, is also a form of logo, but it's using only symbols. What's an example of a device mark?
Apple.
Apple, right? So the Apple logo. Not the words Apple, but the picture of the apple with the bite in it. That's their device mark. Okay, next definition that's on that sheet is the word typeface, which we've already written on the sheet, but we didn't actually describe what it is. And a typeface is a term used to describe one or more fonts of similar style. Okay, and an example of that would be, say, Times or Helvetica. Okay. Those are typefaces. Okay. We call something like Helvetica a typeface because if you look actually up on the character options here, Helvetica is listed twice in the font menu. It's listed as both Helvetica and Helvetica Nuo. Those are two different fonts within the same typeface family. So the typeface family would be Helvetica. These are two slightly different fonts that make up that family. And that's the case in other options here too. You'll notice that for Jazz, there's a few different versions. For Lucida, there's several different versions. So each one of these is a font on its own. They all make up together the Lucida typeface. You can even have slightly different styles of a font. You'll notice that there's regular style, oblique, bold oblique. Oblique basically just means italicized when it's on a bit of an angle. Oblique means a little heavier, or you can have light. So those are slightly different styles of a font. Okay. Let's move on then to two more definitions that kind of come in one. The next one is called Pikas and Points. Now, points, you've probably used that term in the past when you're talking about the size of a font. You know how your English teacher will say to you, I want this essay in 12-point type. Points and pikas are, I'll try and zoom in a bit here so you can see a bit better. Pikas and points are units of measurement. Used in graphic design. And the best way to understand pikas and points is to talk about equivalent measurements. So there are 6 pikas in 1 inch. So for every 1 inch on a printed page, you can divide it up 6 times. We refer to those as 6 pikas. There are 12 points in 1 pika. So you could further divide those 6 pikas in an inch. You could further divide them in half again, you'd end up with 12 points. Here's a little math question then. How many points are there in 1 inch? Who can do the math on that one? 72, right? Because we multiply the 6 by 12. Why do they have a different units of measurement? Well, type has been around long before computers and long before we had standard, metric systems of measurement. So this was their standard system of measurement that was used throughout the printing industry before the sort of current standards that we have now. What's interesting about the point and pica scale too is it doesn't matter, it's irrespective of the page size. It stays the same all the time. That means if I type out something like this type right now is 12-point size on this page, 8.5 by 11-inch page. If I took that same 12-point type, copied and pasted it onto a poster size page, it's still going to be exactly the same size when it prints out. 12-point type is the same no matter what size printed page. It stays consistent. Here's another little question to think about in your head for a second. Approximately how big, we said this was 150-point type, so approximately how big would that letter T be on a page if we printed it out? How big roughly would that letter T be? In inches. Almost 2 inches, right? Is 150 point, 72 points in 1 inch, so be close to 2 inches in height. All right, let's zoom along here then too.